Hey everyone, and welcome. I'm Rohan.
And I'm Priya.
Today, we're going to tackle a really important concept for your CA exams, the cost of debentures. We're going to break it all down, make it super simple, and show you exactly why this is so critical for any big company out there. Right. I mean, think about the biggest companies you know. When they need thousands of crores for some massive new project, they can't just walk into a bank and ask for a loan that big. So where does all that money come from? And, more importantly, what does that money actually cost them? Let's find out. So here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the basics, what debentures even are. Then we'll get into the magic of the tax shield. After that, we'll crunch some numbers with the two key formulas you absolutely have to know, and we'll wrap it all up with a quick summary for your exam prep. Ready? Let's get started. So, first things first, what exactly is a debenture? Well, the easiest way to think about it is like this. Instead of getting one massive loan from a single bank, a company decides to borrow lots of smaller amounts from thousands of people, just like you and me. That right there is a debenture. Exactly. It's basically a formal IOU from the company to the public. The company is promising to pay you a fixed interest every single year and then give you your original investment back after a certain amount of time. The key thing to remember is that it's a debt instrument. So, unlike shares, holding a debenture doesn't give you any ownership in the company. You're a lender, not an owner. Right, and every single debenture has a few standard features. You can think of them like the specs on a new phone. Understanding these is absolutely crucial before we can jump into calculating the real cost. So let's break them down. Okay, so first up is the face value. That's the price printed right there on the certificate. Let's say 100 rupees. Then you have the coupon rate, which is just a fancy name for the interest rate the company promises to pay. Next is the maturity period, basically the lifespan of the loan. And finally, there's the redemption value, which is what the company pays you back at the very end. This is usually the same as the face value, but hey, sometimes it can even be a little bit more. Okay, now for what I think is the most interesting part, and it's an absolute favorite for examiners. Debentures have this secret superpower called the tax shield. This concept is so important. It's this idea that by paying interest, which remember is an expense, a company can actually save a ton of money on its taxes. I know, it sounds pretty weird, right? Yeah, it does seem completely backward. You're spending money on interest, so how on earth can you be saving money? Well, this is where financial management gets really clever. It all comes down to how profit is calculated for tax purposes. Let's look at this comparison to see how it works. We've got two companies, both earning 100 lakh. Now, company X on the left has zero debt, so it pays a 35% tax on the full 100 lakh. That's a tax bill of 35 lakh. Simple enough. But now look over at company Y on the right. It has debt, and it pays 40 lakh in interest. Because that interest is a tax-deductible expense, company Y's taxable profit drops all the way down to 60 lakh, so its tax is just 21 lakh. And boom, that's a direct tax saving of 14 lakh rupees. This is the tax shield in action. The government basically lets you subtract your interest costs before you calculate your tax. And this is exactly why understanding the after-tax cost of debt is so crucial. It shows you the true, much lower cost of borrowing. All right, now that we've seen the power of the tax shield, let's get into the actual calculations. First up, the cost of irredeemable debentures. Now, irredeemable is just a formal way of saying they don't have a fixed repayment date. You can kind of think of them as forever bonds. And here it is, our first must-know formula, the cost of irredeemable debt, or K. Now, I know it might look a bit intimidating at first glance, but it's actually just doing two really simple things. It's calculating our annual interest cost, and then it's applying that awesome tax shield we just talked about. Let's break this down piece by piece. I is simply the annual interest payment. T is the corporate tax rate. That little 1 minus T part, that's our tax shield doing its magic. And NP stands for net proceeds, which is the actual cash the company gets in its hands. It's not always the face value, because sometimes there are issuance costs. Let's try this with the Sona Limited example from your textbook. The annual interest, I, is 12 rupees. The net proceeds, NP, is 94 rupees. And the tax rate, T, is 35%, or 0.35. We just have to plug those numbers right into our formula, and after a quick calculation, we get an after-tax cost of debt of 8.30%. That's the real cost per year for Sona Limited. See? Not so bad. Excellent. Now let's move on to the more common type you'll see, redeemable debentures. These are the ones that have a fixed maturity date.
say 5 or 10 years down the line, when the company has to pay back the original principal amount.
Okay, here's our second key formula. I know, it definitely looks a bit more complex, but trust me, the logic is exactly the same. We just need to account for one extra thing, that final repayment that happens at maturity. Let's look at the new players here. I, NP, and T are all the same as before. The new variables are RV, which is the redemption value, the amount paid back at the end, and N, which is simply the number of years left until the debenture matures. So what is this bigger formula actually doing? It's simply averaging out all the costs over the entire life of the debenture to find one true annual cost. The top part calculates the average annual cost, and the bottom part calculates the average investment value over its life. It's all about getting a much more accurate picture of the real cost of the company each year. Wow, we have covered a lot of ground. So before we wrap things up, let's do a super quick revision of the most important points you absolutely, positively need to remember for your exam. This is the core of everything we just talked about.
Okay, just remember these 4 things. 1. Debentures are simply loans from the public. 2. The interest paid creates that powerful tax shield. 3. Because of this shield, we always calculate the after-tax cost of debt. That's the real cost. And 4. Master those 2 formulas, one for irredeemable and one for redeemable debt. If you get these right, you'll ace any question that comes your way on this topic.
So we've totally mastered the cost of debt. But what about the other side of the coin, the cost of equity? Is it cheaper or more expensive to raise money from shareholders? Well, that is a fantastic question, and we'll tackle that in our next explainer. Thanks so much for joining us, and keep up the great work.